Kyle is going to fax machine this guy into oblivion if he tries to bring this weak-ass argument forward.
I haven't even made my argument. I guess their position is that Kamala should be like, no! No!
Here's what frustrates me about these super lib program YouTubers, right? The people who just come out here and find a way to say the Democrats are based no matter what they do, is that...
I didn't say that. And I never said that. I don't know if they can even conceive of the idea that there are anti-Trump Republicans. There are. They exist. Donald Trump tried to disenfranchise tens of millions of voters because he didn't like the results of the election.
I'm sorry, but this is some of the most brain-dead analysis. But, you know...
Oh my God. What I said was objectively true.
Hey, remember when George Bush and Dick Cheney threw out a bunch of votes in Florida so that...
Yes!
This guy is just so out of his element. It's like, Donnie, you're out of your element. Go back to Call of Duty.
I bet this guy's never got a quad feed in Black Ops Cold War in about 6 seconds. Bet you he's never done that. Bet you he's never 4v1 clutch in a game battles match. Bet you he's never done that. I'm just saying. Friends, if you have a second or two, click like. Comment down below. I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy the video. If you guys are ready, we can switch to the Vanguard video. The Vanguard boys reacted to my video and eviscerated me, I'm told. Now, I have not watched it, but I read some of the comments, and the comments are looking pretty good, boys. There's a lot of, if you scroll through, there's a lot of people that are sticking up for me. I'm not super familiar with Vanguard. They're socialists, right? That's pretty much all I know. All right, so the title of the video is Kyle Kulinski called out over Kamala Harris commentator by this YouTuber. I'm the guy. I'm this guy. I think Kyle Kulinski has very bad political instincts, and I think his take on the endorsement from Cheney is just wrong.
Yeah, so I saw recently on my Twitter timeline that Kyle Kulinski responded to someone who was apparently a little bit unsatisfied with some of his commentary, recent criticism of the Kamala campaign, specifically as it relates to her.
Dude, the Kyle Kulinski video that I made was so tame compared to the that I say when I'm on stream, when I get a little worked up. I purposefully toned it down for the video that I did on Kulinski because I'm like, you know what? Let's just try to make it like fair critique. Let's not take any kind of unnecessary shots. Yeah.
Touting the endorsement of Dick Cheney and talking a lot about bipartisanship, trying to reach across the aisle. So Kyle put out this tweet. He said, hey, at Hutchinson, and this is a YouTube creator that I recently found out about. Seems like he's sort of in the Destiny sphere. I think he actually recently had a chat with Destiny. So part of that.
I just don't like the term orbiter. I just don't like that. I'm fine being like in someone's sphere. I just don't like that term. For me personally, I've been doing this for 15 years. So when somebody calls me an orbiter, I'm like, I don't love that term. I realize it's a term of endearment for DGG. Like it's not like a bad thing. I just don't like it. I just don't like the way it sounds. Yeah.
Crowd, I suppose.
And when he says I'm in his sphere, like I have probably had in my entire career, I'm going to say 12 conversations with Destiny across 15 years. I got nothing against him. I'm not trying to distance myself from him. That's not what this is. It's just I've been doing my own thing on YouTube for a really long time. You know, kind of do like Umu for a couple years and then kind of go off on my own little island. And I want people to know me for who I am and not for people that I know. It's a thing that I do, man. Like I did it with Nanners too, bro. Like, do you guys realize I could have latched on to Nanners like a barnacle in 2012 during the height of the Gmod stuff? I could have rode that gravy train and it would have been so nice. Okay. But there's something like he started to get like really big. And I have an aversion to that. Like I used to have semi-regular interactions with Hasan back in 2020 or 2019.
Orbiter sidekick.
And then Hasan blew up and I just stopped reaching out to him. I could have tried to get a little clout from that but as soon as he got beyond like a certain threshold of like 3,000, I don't know what it was, 3,000 regular viewers, 4,000, 5,000. As soon as he reached that level, I was like, nah, you know, hey, listen, if he wants to talk to me, he'll reach out to me. I don't like doing that. You know what I mean? That's just now like I'm trying to be more disciplined now in 2024, and now I'm being more strategic with content and trying trying to maximize stuff like views. Like I'm thinking about it in a different way. But for a long time, I just never really thought about that stuff.
That is a damning non-answer.
I would say like I definitely held myself back for sure in a number of ways over the years. So anyways.
Made a video saying Kyle Kulinski is wrong about Kamala Harris's campaign. Kyle says, hey, we'd love to have you on Crystal Kyle and Friends to discuss your disagreement with me. To which he did respond, said hi. So it looks like that discussion, debate, whatever you want to call it, might in fact be happening. But I am really interested, Zach, in your opinion on the subs.
Now Kulinski said he so I asked him, I was like, is it like a blood sport thing, or do you guys just want to have a conversation? And he said he just wants to have a conversation. So, you know, we'll see how it goes, but that's coming up here pretty soon.
Substance of this dude's criticisms.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get into it if you're ready. One thing I do admire about Kyle is he's getting back into his debate me bro era, and I think he's using specifically the platform that they've created on Crystal Kyle and Friends to do more of that. Obviously, they'll have dummies like us.
I didn't feel comfortable with like a 2v1, so I invited Josiah to come on with me. So it's going to be me and Josiah having a conversation with Crystal and Kyle. And I think it's going to be from the perspective of like, it's really important. Like, so me and Josiah are going to take the position that if you're on the left, it's really important to support Kamala Harris in 2024. And we'll just kind of go from there. But there's a lot of questions that I've wanted to ask Kyle for a really long time. So I'm excited that I get the opportunity to ask him these questions because he's, you know, I watch some of his videos and some of his takes just kind of blow my mind. And he says it so casually too. Like there was one moment in a video that he did recently where he was talking about how Kamala could do a better job distinguishing herself from Joe Biden. And one of the ways that he suggested that she do that was by telling her supporters that she would have done Build Back Better differently, and she would have forced Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to just sign on to her agenda. And so now I get the opportunity to ask him like in person, what do you mean by that? When you say you would just like force Joe Manchin to vote a certain way, like what does that look like? I don't know what that means, you know. But this kind of thinking I feel like is really pervasive in leftist spaces or in progressive spaces. There's this idea of just like, just do the thing. Just do the thing. You got a thing you got to get done. Just do it. Just do the thing. You want to get a public option done and you don't have the votes for it? Just do it. Just do the thing. Why aren't you doing the thing? You want to get a $15 an hour minimum wage, but you got two senators that are opposed to changing the rules. Just do the thing. Why aren't you just doing it? Why aren't you just doing it? I don't understand why you didn't just do it. You know, just do it, right? Just do it. And this is like a really like common thought. And when you ask them, they come up with the most authoritarian stuff. So like, I'm not kidding. In leftist and progressive circles online in 2021, it was like more than acceptable for them to suggest that Biden go to Manchin, you know, fly out to West Virginia and sit down with Manchin and say, listen, Joe, if you don't sign on to my Build Back Better plan, if you don't support my $15 an hour minimum wage, I am going to announce a criminal investigation into your daughter. That's what they, you know, they say this stuff and they're not kidding. And it's like, well, bro, number one, if he did that, that would have leaked to the press immediately. If he pulled Merrick Garland into the Oval Office and said, listen, I want you to look into Joe Manchin's daughter for me. I got to get him on board with my legislation. Merrick Garland would have resigned and gone to the press and said, I can't serve under an administration that asked me to do something like that. And he might have been impeached on a bipartisan basis. He might have been impeached and removed from office on a bipartisan basis. He might have been impeached and removed by his own party if he would have done something like that. And number two, what's to stop Joe Manchin from just saying, all right, I'm not a Democrat. You had a majority in the Senate and now you're threatening me. And so I'm going to be an independent, or I'm going to switch to the Republican Party. It's just, you know, it's a silly idea, but they just say it so casually. Like, okay, Biden, who is without a doubt the most effective legislator or the effective president, he's the most effective president legislatively in the modern era. Like the sheer amount of bills that he was able to get through Congress is staggering, especially when you consider his slim margins to work with in Congress. Like he got so much done, and yet people feel the need to armchair quarterback because Build Back Better didn't get passed in the way that Biden initially proposed it, because you have Senators Sinema and Manchin who are, you know, putting the brakes on a lot of those like line item things. Anyways, we're responding to a video.
us on there every once in a while, but sometimes they do real serious broadcasting over on the Crystal Kyle and Friends. And I'm excited to see this debate if it happens.
Apparently, as Autumn Leaves points out, he was a former Call of Duty YouTuber, recently transitioned in the political space. So let's see if he has the chops, Zach, to make it. And
To be clear, I have been covering politics since 2016, 17. We slowly ramped up, I would say, in 2017. But by the time I'm going to say we got to 2018, we were covering politics pretty much every day. Like, we still played video games, but we definitely covered politics pretty much every day.
in our streets, in our realm.
Absolutely. Or if we'll snipe him while he's still fresh.
In today's video, we are going to be covering Kamala building one of the most unique, if not the most unique coalition that I've ever.
All right, we're only going to address this once before we start getting bombarded by chat. I try and stay away from ad hominem attacks. It does not appear that this is a sexually transmitted disease, but rather a fashion piece, a lip ring.
Dude, first of all, aren't you guys leftists? I guarantee you that probably like leftists are it's probably like the most likelihood that you're going to have a lip ring is if you self-identify as a leftist. And second of all, this guy has a nose ring. He has a nose ring, bro. Like, you can't see it because it's kind of digital and washed out, but this guy's a nose ring. I'm sorry, I thought this was America. We can wear whatever the we want.
A la Tom DeLonge, All the Right Things music video. Anyway, yes, chat, have a field day with that. We're going to discuss this man's ideas.
What? You're talking to an audience of leftists, of communists, and you're like, yeah, let's make fun of a guy for having a lip ring. Bro, I guarantee you I'm going to say 15% of their audience probably have a lip ring. I'm just going to ballpark it.
Instead.
Yeah. We're taking the high road.
Seen
Absolutely.
In my 41 years of being an American.
You're 41 and you have a I'm sorry. We're going to let it go. We're going to let it go.
Now, it is absolutely true that if it's not that deep, bro. Esme, like last year, she was like, hey, why'd you take your lip ring out? I was like, oh, I don't know. She's like, I thought you looked pretty good with it. I liked it. I really liked the way you look with that. I was like, okay. And I literally put it in for her. That, like, she was the only reason. It's a wholesome reason. She likes the way that it looks on me. I don't care. There you go. It's not that complicated. It's not that deep. If you would have told me 10 years ago that Kamala would be teaming up with a Cheney to take down Donald Trump in an election, I think I would have probably, I think my head would have exploded. I just don't think I would have believed you.
Yeah, that's because it's stupid to do that.
Dick Cheney, for me growing up, was such a galvanizing force in the sense that he was one of the worst people within the Bush administration who, during my extremely formative years in early college, had done a tremendous. I don't like watching myself back. I actually don't like it, but whatever. We're committed. Let's go. This amount of damage and destruction to not only Iraq, but our international standing as well. Long story short, he was just an embarrassment. He was one of the things that I would.
Just a quick note on this guy's political commentary. A lot of quick edits in the middle of like a pretty easy point to make. This guy would get absolutely monstrously manhandled by Kyle if they debate each other.
He's criticizing me for putting cuts into the video. It's usually me like pausing for literally like 3 seconds to think about what I'm going to say, and then I go on. Like, I try, when I do a video like this, I try to be very intentional with my words. I just try, and I end up having kind of a cadence that's like Obama, like he'll do the prolonged sort of pauses. And on YouTube, it's just better to just get rid of that. Like, this idea that I can't rant off the cuff when I stream for like 4 to 6 hours. 4 to 5 days a week. There's no cuts here. It's just live.
Kyle's a fax machine. He's not going to stumble. He's
27 Matt, 27 with 59 months. Cheers, buddy.
not going to need to look at his computer. He doesn't need you to remind him what it was like to live under the George Bush, Dick Cheney regime. I just feel like Kyle is going to fax machine this guy into oblivion if he tries to bring this weak ass argument forward.
Yeah, I have a feeling this.
I haven't even made my argument. What argument are they saying? Like, I haven't even made the argument. We're like 10 seconds into the video. What argument have I made so far?
Guy's going to try to not even debate at all and just be like, I see what you're saying, friendly disagreement, and then move on.
Yeah.
Because, how are you going to win a debate against Kyle on these grounds? I've said it before, but like, I get what Kamala is doing with the Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney thing. I would think it would be more forgivable if she was actually teaming up with more popular Republicans that people in that
you don't really get to pick and choose. Like, you know, you have a bunch of prominent Republicans that are coming out and saying, I can't vote for Donald Trump and country over party, and I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. You don't really have a choice, you know, and if they endorse you, it's like, okay. And I guess their position is that Kamala should be like, no, you, and just like push that aside. You know, forget about like the Nikki Haley primary voters in Arizona. Forget about like never Trumpers or whatever in these swing states who exist. These people are real. They do exist. They do have concerns about Kamala, but they could be persuaded.
You know, identified with the conservatives in this country actually felt favorably about. But as it is, it's like Liz Cheney's a massive loser. She just lost re-election. Why are you going to trot out a
wasn't
huge
even
loser?
close.
No, not at all. It was a complete.
She's a never Trumper, and she was fighting for a state. She was fighting for Wyoming, which is a state that I assume went to Trump by at least 20 or 30 points. What percentage of Republicans are anti-Trump? So according to what poll is this? It's a Statista poll, but hold on, additional information. You need an account for that. Well, this is the first poll that I brought up. And according to this poll, 12% of registered Republicans, 12% of registered Republicans have either a very unfavorable or a somewhat unfavorable view of Donald Trump. That's not an insignificant amount, okay? It's not. In every single swing state, 7 states. Right now, the polling is within 2%. So if you can peel off like an anti-Trump Republican here and an anti-Trump Republican there, you can, I mean, you're not going to build like a strong, big coalition, but you can peel off just enough support to actually make a difference.
Complete humiliation.
Point to when I was very young, he's giving Liz Cheney for being like principled. Like, I loathe her politics. There's nothing about her politics that I've seen that make me think that she is on the level that I'm looking for. But she willingly sacrificed her political career. She knew that was going to be the end of her political career. And it wouldn't have shocked me if, 5 years ago or whatever, if she had aspirations of higher office. Like, it wouldn't have shocked me if she had imagined herself being the Republican candidate for the presidency at some point. And she willingly gave that up to do the January 6th select subcommittee, to be a prominent Republican that was anti-Trump. And these guys are over here like, yeah, she got demolished in Wyoming. It's like, well, yeah, because she didn't drink the Kool-Aid 100%. She actually had some principles to legitimize the fact that I felt kind of ashamed to be an American. Liz Cheney's politics are, in my opinion, very bad, almost detestable. I have basically nothing in common with her on policy, but one thing we do share a common affinity for is liberal democracy and protecting our institutions and recognizing that Trump poses a great threat to all of them.
Why are we
like, one question I want to ask, like, I don't know if I should say it, but like, no, I'm not going to say it. There's a question I want to ask Kyle. I'll save it for our conversation.
doing some whitewashing of Liz Cheney? This woman would be so down for fascism as long as it had the veneer of respectability in front of it. That's what Liz Cheney does not respect about Donald Trump. She doesn't give a fuck about the institutions of America. Do you not? You just said you remembered the Bush administration.
Of course she does. Of course she does. Why would she have done what she did? Why would she have done that? Why would she have given up her political career to take a stance against Donald Trump? Why would she have done that? Was she just looking for attention? Is that what you think? Was she just looking for like a book deal, a movie deal? Like what? A lucrative interview, a lucrative like a career in doing like paid speaking appearances? Like, why would she do that? Why the fuck would she do that? She supported Trump going into the election in 2020. She was encouraging her voters, her supporters in Wyoming, to support Trump. Why would she do that if she didn't care about the institutions? Why would she do that if she didn't care about like protecting democracy? What would be the ulterior motive here? If she was full fash, as these two gentlemen are alleging, why wouldn't she have just gone along with Trump? Why wouldn't she have just hitched herself to that wagon?
Did he not just say he remembered the Bush administration? You ever heard of the Patriot Act? Do you ever remember? Do you know what happened before 9/11 and after 9/11 in this country? Do you know?
First of all, how old are these guys, bro? They look like they're 25. How old are these guys? Do we know their age? They don't look very old.
How we lost so many of our fundamental rights. You know how the government started spying on everyone en masse? What the fuck about this institution?
What we're talking about Liz Cheney right now. However you feel about her father, she was not in Congress when these laws were drafted and passed.
Does Liz Cheney seem to have so much reverence for? That's why that's a disgrace. Because if Kamala Harris wants to stand for democracy,
I guess there's no like spectrum. You know what I mean? Like to them, supporting something like the Patriot Act, which I think most reasonable people have issues with, to them, supporting something like the Patriot Act means you're no different from someone who would support Donald Trump after he tried to steal an election. Like there's no difference between the two. There's no daylight between these two.
if Kamala
Or no, is it the other way around? I don't know that phrase.
Harris wants to stand against fascism, if she wants to show respect for the institution that is America, you cannot do so with the warm welcome of the Cheney. Are you kidding me? The Cheney family? The
Sure you can.
Cheney chain gang? Are you kidding me? It's
Sure you can.
ridiculous.
These
Sure you
things.
can.
So if you've been following online discourse in the last couple of weeks, you will be well aware of the fact that Kamala touting Dick Cheney's endorsement, Kamala touting Liz Cheney's endorsement has been a source of controversy in left-wing spaces. A lot of people think that it's a shameful thing for her to accept the endorsement of a man like Dick Cheney, who was himself in many ways directly responsible for suffering on a magnitude that is difficult to comprehend in Iraq. We're talking about at
Not
minimum
just Iraq,
hundreds of thousands
Afghanistan.
dead, at minimum 1 to 2 million people displaced. It was one of the worst foreign policy blunders in our nation's history. I don't think that we should forget that. I also think that we need to appreciate the moment that we're in right now. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that Donald Trump represents an existential threat to this country, if not immediately. Do they agree? I wonder if they even agree. Immediately, then by virtue of the fact that he constantly tries to chip away and is sometimes successful at chipping away.
Here's what frustrates me about these super lib programmed YouTubers, right? The people who just come out here and find a way to say the Democrats are based no matter what they do, is that just because
I didn't say that. I never said that. I never said that. Listen, you have a Republican Party, and we know what they're capable of when you give them power. When you give the Republican Party power at the state level, they pass like a deluge of anti-trans bills. They gut protections for reproductive health. They intentionally place obstacles to voting. They make it more difficult to vote just because. We could go down the list of like dozens of things that we know that they're capable of when you give them power. And right now, the Democratic Party is the only thing that is capable at the national level of protecting us from this party. And so there's a level of triage in the 21st century. Maybe elections didn't have the kind of stakes that they hit that they do now 30 or 40 years ago. I don't know how different the country would have been if George H.W. Bush would have won re-election. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how transformative Bill Clinton was as a president. But we know that the Republican Party now are on a really dark path. And it's intertwined with a rising Christian nationalism. It's intertwined with a rising sort of fascism. There's a fascist wave, not just in the United States, but all over the world right now. I'm not saying we're like a stone's throw away from a Hitler situation, but if we're not careful, we could set down on a path that eventually leads there. And if you give a country like America, which is undoubtedly the most powerful country that has ever existed on the face of the planet, if you put someone like a Hitler in charge of this America, we are capable of so much more destruction than the Nazis were ever capable of. And so there is a level of urgency in the current moment to recognize the Republican Party for what they are right now and to acknowledge that the Democratic Party at the national level is the only thing that's stopping us from that. And so it's really important that people take elections serious. Now, does this mean that like you can never criticize a Democrat? Of course not. The Democratic Party is a big tent. It's a big old tent, okay? We got moderates, we got socialists, we got progressives, we got some conservatives now in the Trump era because he was so bad. Trump was so bad. This is what these people are missing. Trump was so bad that someone like Dick Cheney, he's too extreme for someone like Dick Cheney, okay? He's too extreme for someone like Liz Cheney. And somebody in chat said too big of a tent. It's like, well, listen, do you want to beat them or not? If you want to beat them, you should welcome the Big Tent. But yeah, this idea that the Democrats are based no matter what they do. It's like, you can find, I mean, like in a party where there's how many members in the House? 205 or 6 Democrats serving in the House and 51 in the Senate. You can find individual Democrats that take these positions that you totally disagree with. You can disagree with Democratic leadership from time to time and their strategy. I mean, I have issues with the way that Biden has cozied up to Netanyahu. I think it is a complicated situation, but I do think he's just been way too gracious with Netanyahu. And I think that'll be one thing about his presidency that people look back on and rightly criticize him for. It's not like these people are infallible. It's not like the party is infallible. But I think in the Trump era, the party has been remarkably competent. You have to give them that. Like, even if you don't like them, you have to admit, like, man, they did a good job of like getting together, unifying, recognizing the threat of the Trump era, having a really good midterm performance in 2018, and then bucking a trend of incumbents winning re-election. They turned Trump into the first midterm election since 1992. And then we expanded our majority in the Senate during our first midterm in an economic downturn. That's kind of crazy. So the current Democratic Party, I think, is doing a really good job. We can put whatever criticism you have to admit that they've done a really good job of like keeping this Trump wave at bay. And to me, for my politics, victory matters a lot. A lot. Victory is so important. Your political movement, I don't know how far you can go if you don't prioritize victory, if you don't prioritize winning elections. I don't take you seriously as a movement if one of your number one, if not your number one priority isn't winning elections. And it seems like I don't know much about these two gentlemen, so I'm just going to make a lot of assumptions based on the stuff that they're saying. But people like them don't really prioritize victory. They're perfectly fine losing to Republicans, or I guess they don't see it as losing because they don't pretend like they're a part of this coalition. Like, these guys don't necessarily strike me as the type that would say like, yeah, I'm a part of Kamala's coalition. And then when you treat them like opposition, they'll say stuff like, oh, that's just punching left. Why are you punching left? Wow, great use of your time, punching left, picking on us poor socialists, even if they spend 90% of their time like Democrats or whatever. It's all a bit silly to me.
Because we need to meet this political moment, just because Donald Trump does represent a huge threat to our democracy and a huge threat to our country, doesn't mean it should be against the law to criticize the Democrats or to point out when they're making obvious political missteps, right? Like, I'm not saying that
nobody said you can't criticize Democrats. Nobody, not me, nobody.
Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney thing is going to cost them the election, but I think it's a bad look. And if you're trying to stand out as like, the joy candidates, if you're trying to be the candidates that represent the future,
it's a bad look to you two, but you two do not represent the median voter. I hate to say, I'm just saying
it's tone deaf and it's a bad decision to make. I don't understand why people have decided you can't criticize Kamala Harris at all when she's making a bad decision. If it's the extraneous threat of Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, a lot of the people in this destiny sphere do the exact same thing, where it's like, bro, we're not criticizing the Democrats because we prefer the Republicans. We're criticizing the Democrats because our criticisms, if they took our advice, it would make them more likely to win.
Okay, explain this to me, okay? If you think you're in a position to be handing out advice to the Democratic Party that you think is just self-evident and obvious, how come the progressive movement in this country isn't like 5 times bigger? It's like, talk that shit when you can build a movement that can grow. Talk that shit when you can build winning coalitions all over the country. And I don't know what state these guys live in, but if they live in a blue state, it's like, it's so easy to talk that from a safe blue district in this country. What happens when you're trying to run for office for like a district in West Virginia, like a purple district in West Virginia? It's 5 times bigger than Hutch thinks it is. I'm talking about that at the national level. Like, why do people like Nina Turner lose 2 races in a row? Why do you think that is? Why did Bernie lose 2 primaries in a row? You know what? That's a whole other can of worms that I don't even want to get into, because now we're going to start talking about like, well, they stole it from them and they rigged it and blah, blah, blah.
We're not coming at this from a place of just like trying to tear down the Democrats. We want them to go back to being the party of the working people. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, it's not a good strategy. It'd be one thing if Kamala got like the endorsement of the governor of Georgia, what's his name? I forget, but he's a
Kemp?
really popular Republican. And
His name is Kemp. You guys cover politics for a living and you don't know the governor of Georgia? It's like, come on. Like, isn't this your job?
Georgia, the guy that Trump was recently all over, going to war with.
What's his
name?
Brian Kemp.
Yeah, Brian Kemp. Like if Brian Kemp endorsed Kamala Harris, I honestly would not blame her at all for going out there at a rally, proudly accepting his endorsement, because it makes.
Wait, if I look at Brian Kemp's policies, are they going to be that different from Liz Cheney before she lost her seat? My guess is that Kemp and Liz Cheney on policy probably line up like 100%. He's doing voter ID laws. He's doing a lot of he's anti-abortion. He supported efforts to overturn the ACA, stacks the judiciary with super right-wing judges. He was among the last governors to issue a stay-at-home order during the pandemic. Like, I don't know. He just seems like, what is the substantive? You're saying like, oh, I wouldn't blame her for touting the endorsement of Brian Kemp when this makes no sense to me. How are you going to get pissy about an endorsement from Liz Cheney and then be like, oh, I understand if it's from Kemp? I just, what? Explain that to me.
Since she needs to win Georgia and he has a high approval rating in the state, people like him more than they like Trump in Georgia. That would make sense. But again, who does Liz Cheney represent? Who does Dick Cheney represent? Kamala can't win. Why?
I don't know how many individuals in this country Liz Cheney can be personally responsible for convincing to vote for Kamala, but it's not zero. You know, she represents a larger movement of conservatives that are anti-Trump. And there are millions of people in this country that are conservative, that are not comfortable with Donald Trump. And someone like Liz Cheney is not this big villain to them. I don't think these two understand that. They think the number is zero. They think, like, I don't know if they can even conceive of the idea that there are anti-Trump Republicans. They exist. When we looked at the primary votes, I thought that was super telling. You had, and I think this comes up in the video, but like you had states where 20, 25, 30% of people were writing in Nikki Haley's name in primary contests in states all over the country after she had dropped out of the race. If you don't think there is a contingent of people in this country that are conservative but don't like what Trump did on January 6th and don't like his attempts to subvert democracy, or you don't like them for a whole host of other reasons. I mean, there's like, let me count the ways. These are people that you should try to pull into your coalition. Absolutely. Of course, if they're gettable, of course you can.
Wyoming. And even if she could, Liz Cheney just lost re-election in Wyoming. So she's not even
because she came out against Trump, not because, okay,
popular in her home state. The only people
she was popular. She was popular in Wyoming. She was popular in, like, how many times did she get reelected? She got replaced by this woman with the most creepy beady eyes you could possibly imagine. She won a race in 2016. She won a race in 2018. She won her race in 2020. She was a popular figure in within the conservative movement until she dared to step out of line with Trump.
People that she speaks for are probably almost certainly already voting for Kamala Harris. So I just think it's dumb to trot out someone who's so objectively unpopular. It would be like if the Republicans proudly accepted the endorsement of Anthony Weiner and we're like, see, we have a Democrat on our team now. And it's like, I see what you're doing, but not that guy, please, not that guy. He's not a good.
I mean, the Republican Party does the same thing. I mean, every election, every presidential election, both parties are going to pick like, hey, look at this Republican that supports me, or hey, look at this Democrat that supports me. The Republicans did it with Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. And to like a lesser extent, I guess you can say like Russell Brand. I mean, I don't know if he was like a full-on Democrat before, but yeah.
Good spokesperson for the Democratic Party.
Or what about Tulsi Gabbard, which they...
Well, that's a really good analog or analogy, or it's a really good comparison, right? Is Tulsi Gabbard that popular? Is she super popular? No. Is RFK like a powerhouse? Is he super popular in this country? No.
They try and parade out, right? Like this was...
You're not doing it because these people are necessarily popular like broadly. You're doing it because you think they can add this or that little amount, whatever it is, to your coalition. They didn't pick Liz Cheney because she's this like wildly popular politician. They picked Liz Cheney because she represents a kind of voter in this country that is conservative, that doesn't like Donald Trump. That's all this is. She doesn't need to have like a 90% approval rating for it to be like a valid endorsement. That's not what this is about.
The Democratic Congress. It's like, yeah, dude, everybody's seen that grift a mile away. Tulsi never stood for anything but Tulsi. Okay, and that's become so obvious.
Yeah.
But we can keep playing this.
At our norms that keep our institutions strong. If nothing else, this sets the stage for someone to come down the line, and their job of upending democracy, if that was their goal, would be much easier because someone like Donald Trump came before him. Donald Trump tried to disenfranchise tens of millions, literally tens of millions of voters spread across a half a dozen or so swing states because he didn't like the results of the election. He tried to sue.
I'm sorry, but this is some of the most brain dead analysis. But you know,
oh my God. What I said was objectively true. It's not even analysis at that. Like I'm just relaying a thing that happened. I'm trying to set the stage of like, I'm trying to impress what a unique threat Donald Trump is. Like however much you dislike, I don't know, Rand Paul or whoever else, you know, like Donald Trump, for the first time in our country's history, presided over a transition that didn't do a peaceful transfer of power. That's never happened before. He is a unique threat. He just is.
You know, this guy is just so out of his element. It's like, Donnie, you're out of your element. Go back to Call of Duty.
In courts up and down the country to I bet this guy's never got a quad feed in Black Ops Cold War in about 6 seconds. Bet you he's never done that. Bet you he's never 4v1 clutch in a game battles match. Bet you he's never done that. I'm just saying. To toss those people's votes out.
So hot.
I live in California. Jesus Christ.
That is
California, very safe.
That is a damning non-answer.
Blue state, but if I lived in a state like Arizona, if I lived in a state like Georgia, if I lived in a state like Pennsylvania, where Trump would have tried to have thrown my vote out, I would have been livid. I already am livid, but if I lived in one of those states, that would infuriate me. So the stakes of the
Hey, remember when George Bush and Dick Cheney threw out a bunch of votes in Florida so that
Jesus Christ. Are they running in 2024? Are they running? Are they trying to lecture me about the 2000 election?
George Bush could win the election? Does that infuriate you, pal, or is that just a
Yes! 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 I lived through that. Yes! Yes! What the Supreme Court did was really bad. It was infuriating. Yes.
consequence of history? Because, you know, Dick Cheney, am I right? LOL, Donald Trump.
This election are very, very high as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of people don't agree with Kamala's decision to proudly tout these endorsements. One of those individuals, these guys think they hate me, but it's probably that they hate their parents. I think that's what's going on here. Is Kyle Kulinski. He gives his take here.
She's doing this big fawning event with Liz Cheney. First of all, her approval rating is abysmally low. Like, nobody actually likes her. And second of all, I don't know, have you seen an event like this be done with, say, Bernie Sanders, right? Or somebody who more represents the left worldview? No, because it's like they're taken for granted. She recently rejected a meeting with the uncommitted movement. Thank you, right? So it's like run and hide from my base who are telling me stop arming and funding Israel.
You're not the base, though. That's what these people don't realize. They think they're the base, and the base is like, you know, a median black voter in Georgia. You know what I mean?
As they carpet bomb innocent civilians. Run and hide.
Wait, Mega Airhead, did you just donate 5 memberships on YouTube? Thank you so much, buddy.
Hide from them and then go snuggle up to Liz Cheney. So this is the first time you're starting to see some of the same, you know, Hillary Clinton type mistakes being made. These are Hillary Clinton type mistakes. As that famous drill tweet goes,
Hillary Clinton lost because of the Comey letter. Okay, I'll die on that hill. All right, she would have been sworn in on January 20th, 2017, if Comey had never written that letter. Okay, the Trump. People keep treating like the Trump movement and the MAGA movement like it's this big joke and it's so easy to beat them. And it's not. They are a formidable. We can call them silly. We can call them stupid. We can call them misinformed. We can call them crazy. We can call them delusional. But they are a formidable political movement. That's just facts. They tap into a latent kind of like nativist rage. And that's a really potent motivating force in politics. If you can tap into people's anger, their rage, their feeling of being abandoned, maybe a little bit of racism, maybe a little bit of patriarchy, misogyny, that kind of thing. That's a really potent mixture. And all you got to do is just get up there.
Is yet to come.
All you got to do is just get up there and just talk about how everything's broken. Everything's broken. They're f***ing you. Those immigrants over there, they're f***ing you, and I'm going to save you. Only I can save you. Listen, I'm frustrated that that's a very powerful political movement in this country, but it is. It's no small thing to beat Donald Trump, okay? These guys think that they could... These guys have convinced themselves that they, if they were running a campaign, they would be beating Trump by 20 points because they would just tell everybody, we'll give you free healthcare. You know, if you just promise to give people free healthcare, oh, well, all of a sudden West Virginia's in play. Oh, we're just a purple state. Just tell them you're for Medicare for all. Look at how it polls. Look at the national opinion polls on Medicare for all.
You don't, under any circumstances, gotta hand it to ISIS.
They have no concept of like regional differences and just like the fact that 330 million people live here. There's a lot of different culture from state to state. What works in one state isn't necessarily going to work in another state. And yes, this exposes, I think, some institutional disadvantages that Democrats have. It frustrates me that small rural states have this incredible advantage in the Electoral College and in the Senate. But that is what it is. It's just the system is what it is right now. Maybe we can change that down the line, institute some reforms or whatever. But until that day comes, you got to acknowledge the dynamic that we live in, or you got to acknowledge the dynamic that different states have. So I want to start by saying that I think Kyle Kulinski is a conflicted individual in that I have seen him give some unbelievably base takes. I have seen him, for example, take Brianna Joy Gray to task.
What he's about to say is, wow, Kyle has nuance. He can walk and chew bubblegum. This guy is able to give an honest assessment of what's happening. And sometimes I agree with him and sometimes I don't. Like, this is absolutely crazy. Like, yeah, dude, he's not a
I would not phrase it that way. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to me, he's a bit conflicting because I have seen him just be uber based, super based in a way that made me like gasp, like, oh my God, did he just say that? And then I've seen him give takes that I think are silly. That's how I would phrase what he just said.
shit lip. He's not reading lines. It's really clear that this guy started listening to Destiny when he was playing Call of Duty, and now he's just regurgitating a
Bro, why does he keep bringing up Destiny? Why does he keep bringing up Destiny? These guys don't know a thing about my life, okay? They have no idea how I've evolved politically throughout my adult life. They have no idea what I was doing back in like 2001 or like the ramp up to the second Iraq war, the 2004 election, you know? They have no idea that I was like, you know, like trying to cover like Occupy and stuff when it was like 2011, and I'm on Respawn talking about the Occupy movement or whatever. All of this stuff, like Destiny, I think him and I have a lot of overlap. I think we generally speaking agree on a lot of stuff. But my interest in politics goes so far back beyond my familiarity with Destiny. Like I think I first became aware of Destiny maybe in like 2018, maybe. God, these like online lefties are obsessed with Destiny. It is wild. Obsessed with him. Jesus Christ.
A bunch of talking points. He has no political foundation. He watches MSNBC and he thinks they're spitting. You know what I mean? He basically does.
I don't have cable, bro. I don't even have cable. Should I start like generalizing them? Should I start making all kinds of assumptions about them? Because there's a few things that come to mind. I'm just saying.
Does what like other commentators who are just straight up Dem Party propagandists. He does it way right. He does it way shittier. He has none of the skill set that you would want from somebody to eloquently feed you a line of bullshit. I'm sorry, but he does it. Like,
he's just getting started. He's like a month into his career. He might, you know.
I thought he was a streamer from Call of Duty.
Yeah,
These
that's
guys
a different audience, though. I mean, I'm just saying.
All right, we'll be nice to this shit.
are not properly delegating enough. Gee, I wonder why leftists are bad at coalition building. It's such a mystery. why, you know, it's such a mystery that the progressive movement has basically been like, there was all this promise and potential in 2016, like during the Bernie era. You know, there was so much potential there. There was so much potential to build and build and build and build and actually start something. Like these guys hard through during the Black Lives Matter stuff. Like Black Lives Matter in 2020, this thing happens, then this organic movement kind of springs up, and then Black Lives Matter goes from like 40% popularity nationally, or 45 maybe, all the way up to 60, and then it was right back down to 45% within like 2 months, because these guys didn't want to entertain a conversation about how like maybe defund the police is a shitty slogan. Maybe that's a confusing, vague slogan. Maybe we don't do that. How do you throw in that spot? Anyways, respect, responsibility to the Democratic Party in Minnesota for taking tiny majorities in the state legislature and the governorship and turning that into serious material gains for the state. But I've also heard him give his takes many a time that made me question his political instincts. So, for example, he supported the Force the Vote movement. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, there was a push early on in Biden's presidency from the...
This guy is so out of his element. He doesn't understand anything. Yeah. Oh, guys.
Force the Vote was a movement birthed from idiot leftist content creators. And it was this fantasy that they wanted to leverage votes from the squad, you know, because our majority in the House was really small in 2020. We actually lost seats in the House in 2020, and there was like some risk that we were going to lose the House, but we held on, and we held on with a bare majority. And so what did these guys immediately go to? So like, keep in mind, okay, listen, Biden is inaugurated on January 20th. We still haven't done mass distribution of the vaccine. So the country is still in a state of crisis, literally a state of crisis, when he's sworn in on January 20th. And we have these really small majorities to work with. And historically speaking, you're probably going to lose your majority during the first midterm. George W. Bush was the only one that bucked that trend in 2002 after September 11th, which is just, you know, that's a whole other conversation. And so you have this precious little time to act on your agenda. And before you can even get to your agenda, you have this precious little time to use that majority to get stuff done. And these guys, the first thing they wanted to do was to get the squad to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi in order to force a vote on Medicare for all, not because they thought they were going to win, but because then you have a list of Democrats that are on record. And now you have like a target list. Okay, these are the people that we need to primary. When we had bare majorities to work with in Congress, that was their priority. The first thing they wanted to do, not get Congress in session, get it functional so we can start like delivering on an agenda right away with the ARP, which did a lot of good stuff. We halved childhood poverty. We halved it. And these guys wanted to waste precious time forcing a vote that they knew we were going to lose. Also, what does that mean for like the Medicare for all movement? How does it benefit us if now we take a vote and we're like 100 votes away from getting Medicare for all? Doesn't that just stymie like any kind of conversation about that stuff? Like sweeping healthcare reform was something that eluded every major president. Every single one of them. Every single modern president wanted to do big sweeping healthcare reform. And it took us getting to 2008 where we finally had a 60 vote threshold. And there were a lot of moderates. There were a lot of moderate Democrats serving in the Congress at that time. And so getting the ACA over the finish line was a big deal. It was no small thing. But the reality is that we don't have nearly the kind of vote count that we need to pass Medicare for all right now. We just don't. We don't. And it's like, okay, you want to do this force the vote thing to like force an issue, but how does that help anything in the short term or the long term? How does that help anything? What do you do with that? Okay. So now like heading into like the first 2 years of Biden's presidency where he has this really tenuous hold on power in the Congress, the Democrats, you want to waste time fomenting a bunch of division? Really? You want to put a crosshair on a bunch of Democrats that you need to pass your legislative? You need like almost every single vote in the House. You need almost every single vote. And the first thing you want to do is you want to start an intra-party fight? Why? It's not that I don't understand what force the vote was, it's that I thought it was silly. It was a silly proposition.
You can't trust this guy because a while ago he wanted the squad members to use their leverage. Now, is he going to give any mention to the fact that this guy founded Justice Democrats, which helped get all of those?
The leverage, whatever leverage you think you were going to gain in that spot, you were actually going to lose leverage. If the first thing you did in the first Dem trifecta since 2009, if the very first thing you did with your leverage or whatever was pick a fight with other Democrats in the party, you're giving up leverage that you could have used like later on. You're not going to be very instrumental in it's going to be way more difficult to pursue whatever policy agenda you think would be the best course of action. It's going to be really difficult to do that if you just make a bunch of enemies like right away at a time when we had just bare majorities. Scoremonger says, yeah, brilliant, worked out really great for MAGA when they did the same shit too. I mean, that is a really good thing to point to right now. If you want to look at what infighting does to a party, look at the Republicans in the House. That's what that looks like. If you want to start a intra-party civil war when you have a bare majority, that's what that looks like. You end up with a party that ousted their own House Speaker for the first time in history. You ended up with a Republican conference in the House that kowtows to the extremists in their party. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the most successful fundraisers within the Republican Party. Their party is a mess right now. This should be a much easier election for the Republicans. It should be. We experienced really high inflation, economic hardship for a lot of people. Any competent political party would take a moment like that and turn that into political wins. And the Republican Party could not do it because they're so disorganized, scattered, dysfunctional, and they're following like an insane person. And the Democrats, in contrast, have been united, organized, focused. They've strung together a bunch of really successful like electoral wins all over the country, limited their losses in the House in 2022, and then expanded their majority in the Senate. That's what happens when your party gets their shit together. And you want to jeopardize all that for a symbolic vote that would have got nothing. It would have accomplished nothing. It would have been counterproductive. You want to do that before we pass like the ARP? You really want to make, you want to get into a fight about Medicare for all? You want to do that before we do the ARP? Really? That's the first thing you want to do? And you call that leverage? I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it.
Squad members into Congress in the first place. And then, yeah, guess what? When they got there, he wanted him to use the leverage that they swore up and down they were going to use. Now, what's to force the vote? Perfect. No. Do we basically know what the end result of force the vote would have been? Yeah, absolutely. None of them would have supported a floor vote for Medicare for all, and they were all going to sell us down the river. So, hey, you know what? We only had to wait a few more years to get it all figured out.
So what was the point of it? What was the point of it? And what was the point of it? Why would you even propose it in the first place? It sounds like you know the score. You know what would have happened.
But the reality that somehow it was a catastrophic thing to want AOC and...
I didn't say it was catastrophic. I said it was silly. It was just a silly proposition. It was unserious, you know? It was fueled by this hyper-populist rhetoric online. There was no sound strategy to it. It was just a silly thing to propose.
The squad members to band together and actually hold out for some leverage. I don't even give a if it was about Nancy Pelosi. That was just the political moment at the time to band together and do something. Instead, we got the, I think it was an Ayanna Pressley quote where she says, "We all vote alone." Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a squad. That's not a progressive voting bloc. That's not what you guys ran on and fundraised for and misled the entire public into believing, right? No. And of course, it's disingenuous when people spend all of their time only criticizing the progressives in Congress. That's what people like Breonna Joy Gray, that's what people like Jimmy Dore do. But it doesn't mean that these people are somehow above criticism just because.
Do they spend most of their time going after progressives? I feel like they spend most of their time going after like Democrats, like establishment Democrats, right?
I agree with them more often than not. No, I'm still going to want to hold them accountable. These were the people that the regular working class folks, the Bernie bros. These are the folks that, you know, we sent money to donate.
And they've all, to my understanding, I mean, from my own observation, all of them have matured in their politics. All of them recognize the value of a coalition. All of them speak their mind very candidly. I saw an AOC tweet today lamenting the aid that we give to Israel and criticizing Netanyahu for invading Lebanon and criticizing Biden for being so cozy with Netanyahu. You can do that and still be a part of an organized coalition to successfully stand in opposition to the Republican Party, which like the Democratic Party or not, They are infinitely better. If you're a self-described leftist or a progressive, they are infinitely better than the Republican Party. For example, the Dobbs decision is just one thing of many things that you can point to. Because of this Dobbs decision, now political groups and parties and organizations, they have to spend time, they have to spend money, they have to spend resources, they have to spend manpower clawing back these rights on a state level, and then maybe we can tackle that in the Congress at some other point. We don't have the votes obviously right now, but now you have to spend all this time clawing back a right that was taken from you. And that's time and energy and resources and money that you could have spent on pushing us forward in a different kind of way. But now we got to devote all this time to this thing that we lost because we let Republicans have a trifecta in 2017, or rather we let them have the presidency and the Senate to confirm these Supreme Court justices who we all knew were going to overturn Roe v. Wade. And now we got to spend all this time on that. That's time we could have spent elsewhere. It's just, it's counterproductive to, even if you're a socialist, even if you're like a Leninist, your job is going to be more difficult going forward if you keep allowing Republicans to stack the judiciary with extremely conservative Heritage Foundation picks. And if you let them pass these bills over and over again, it's a nightmare. Like the situation in the Supreme Court right now is a nightmare. 6-3, you know, and Alito and Thomas are probably going to retire if Trump wins. And now we got 5 like really young Supreme Court justices that we just have to deal with for the next several decades. What a nightmare. And it's like, yeah, we can have a conversation about expanding the Supreme Court or instituting other reforms that would place term limits on Supreme Court. But that takes political capital. You need the votes to do that. And that's no small thing. You need a filibuster-proof majority to do something like that. So the whole proposition of just letting Republicans win when you had an opportunity to stop them is just something I'll never understand it. I'll never understand somebody who could look at that and be like, you know what? I'm okay with that. Democrats need to learn their lessons. It's like, well, what lesson are you teaching them? You're teaching them that you guys are not reliable. You're teaching them that you can deliver the most progressive agenda in my lifetime when we're talking about Joe Biden. And you still won't like go to bat for Kamala when she needs your vote in a contest against Donald Trump. So what are they going to do? They're going to pivot to the center because they see the center is more gettable votes. What strategy did you think they were going to do if you did this? You know what I mean?
They said, hey, support these candidates. They're going to really take these individuals to task here. We're not sending another Elizabeth Warren to the Senate. We're sending, real renegade people like AOC to protest outside of Nancy Pelosi's office, right? So trying to act like that was some sort of an own for Kyle, as if that's some sort of a diss on his political instinct. It's like, bro, just go back to eating out of Destiny's trough.
Left flank for members like
bro.
the school. These guys are unhinged, bro. These guys are on one. Quad AOC.
Here, sorry, just instantly.
Oh yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good.
No, go. What were you saying?
No, it's all good. I'll just break it in a second.
Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, at the time Jamal Bowman. There was a push for them to withhold their vote for the House speakership in favor of Nancy Pelosi in order to try to acquire some leverage and then use that leverage to force a vote for Medicare for all on the House floor. This was a movement that was supported by people like Breonna Joy Gray and Jimmy Dore, and I think it was one of the most silly propositions that you could possibly suggest. Major healthcare reform in this country is something that has dogged basically every president. Well, now I'm just repeating myself in modern history, including Barack Obama, who wanted to go even further with the ACA. But
Oh my God, this exact kind of logic is why forced to vote was a necessary discussion. And obviously, Zach.
Bro, we barely got the ACA. We got it over the finish line at the final second of the match, okay? We barely got the ACA when we had 60 votes in the Senate. And you want to pick this big ass fight about Medicare for all when we have a 50-50 Senate? Like, I don't understand. I feel like for some people, if you tell them like the answer is no for right now, it's just no. And there's nothing we can do about that. It's just no. We don't have the numbers to have that conversation right now. Maybe we can do that in like 10 years or 15 years, but we got to build a much bigger coalition before we can have that conversation. We couldn't even get a public option done in 2009, 2010, when they were negotiating this policy, when they were negotiating this bill. We couldn't even get a public option in. And now you want to force a conversation about a losing issue at a time when we don't have the kind of numbers that we had back then. I don't understand that logic. It's so silly to me.
Zach and we've probably made more videos mocking and lampooning Jimmy Dore in the last couple of years than anyone. But I will maintain that Force the Vote was his last serious contribution to this space that I actually think was worthwhile, as ugly as it got. I thought it was a genuinely fascinating and necessary strategic conversation.
Nobody cared about this conversation outside of their niche online circles, you know? If you walked outside and you asked people at the time they were having this debate in their online space, if you went out there in America and just started walking down the street and asking people, do you know what Force the Vote is? 99.99999% of people would not have been able to tell you, because this was only a thing with like their niche online circle. Nobody else was talking about this conversation. I guarantee you, not a single member of the squad thought more than 1 second about this. They probably opened up their phone, saw what people were asking for, and were like, no, we're not going to do that. That's stupid.
About how exactly the squad members should act in Congress. Exactly like you said, Zach, should they go along to get along, or should they be an aggressive left flank, a left-wing version of the Tea Party, which is originally how Kyle Kulinski envisioned Justice Democrats. Obviously, that did not come to fruition. But I think in retrospect, I mean, even if it wasn't successful, at least it would have been a real aggressive shot across the bow. At least it would have actually been using their influence.
Well, what does that get you? It's not enough to say, well, I would have liked it because it would have been a shot across the bow. Like that has to lead to something, right? Like there needs to be something substantive that you can point to. It's not enough to just be like, oh, I feel good that they fired a shot across the bow. What does that mean in the context of like that Congress? What does that even mean? How did that net you anything? What do you feel good about there?
Influence as a collective in Congress to make a stand for something, specifically because that period of time, 2021, it really represented the end of the Bernie era. That's when everyone realized.
You know, the left flank in Congress were able to successfully persuade Biden on student loan debt. In 2020, Biden was running on forgiving student loan debt via a congressional bill. He wasn't running on doing it with an executive order. And one of the reasons why he moved on this is because he actually welcomed like the Bernie Warren wing of the Senate into the White House during those policy discussions, where they had a voice and they were able to use that voice to successfully pressure him to use executive power. So he did. The Supreme Court turned it off. Not turned it off. I'm reading a chat here. The Supreme Court turned that down, and then he pursued this alternative avenue where he's doing it piecemeal, little by little. And they're going to complain that he should have done more, but he's forgiven over 10% of all student debt. He's forgiven student debt completely for like 4 to 5 million people. It's a big deal.
Your lip piercing. The correct response is to tell them that their mother can't come unless she feels cold steel on her clit. Also, that wasn't. At home, they were stupid. Conflated it that with insult. Dunk right there for you.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Oh, if we don't make a stand now and force Medicare for all to continually be part of the discussion, all the momentum will evaporate. All of this momentum will, escape the tire, whatever you want to say. And that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. And again, it's not like Force the Vote necessarily 100% would have prevented that, but at least it would have kept the policy as something that the left was fighting for. At least it would have kept it in the discussion. And yeah.
Okay, well, what does that discussion look like? Okay, day 2 of that Congress, right? Here's what the headlines say. Medicare for all votes fails spectacularly in the House. 120 Democrats opposed, or 150 Democrats opposed. Okay, what'd you get for that? And that now when people think about that, they're gonna think like, oh, well, like any politician running in the future is going to remember that vote. They're going to remember a vote where Medicare for all failed spectacularly, and you're going to have a ton of politicians that are going to be running in purple districts all over the country, and there are a lot of swing purple districts. Do you think they're going to want to confidently run on Medicare for all after it fails miserably in 2021? You think their solution is like, oh, we didn't do it aggressively enough. I just need to be more aggressively in favor of Medicare for all. That way we'll get it done. How does this make any sense? The politicians all over the country are going to run away from that policy now because they're going to view it as toxic.
yeah, I think that despite the fact that there were a lot of grifters involved with that movement, Kyle Kulinski actually probably articulated the case better than anyone.
You can go as far back as Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, H.W. Bush, Clinton, George W. Bush even. These are all presidents that wanted to do something big on healthcare, but were constrained by the Congress that they had at the time. There was no chance that something like Medicare for All could succeed in 2021. When Joe Biden was inaugurated, we didn't have nearly the kind of majorities that we would need.
That was not the argument anybody made. So clearly he had no idea what he was talking about. That's why he doesn't.
I know exactly what this movement is, bro. I know. I'm trying. It's not complicated. You guys are treating like this force to vote thing like it's this esoteric, difficult thing to understand. This isn't complicated. We know what you're trying to do. It was stupid.
Doesn't refute any of the arguments that anybody made, that it was about who in the Congress is willing to stick their neck out for the American people and be a mover and shaker and push the Overton window forward. That was the entire argument for force the vote, and it was one of the last arguments to, as Gavin said, keep it in the conversation. And Gavin, does it feel like Medicare for All is in the conversation anymore? Sadly.
Keep it in the conversation by forcing it to vote miserably. I'm going to kill myself in Minecraft. You want to keep it in the conversation by forcing it to fail miserably, and you think this is going to shift the Overton window? It's going to be the opposite. People are going to run away from that policy if you do that. Jesus Christ.
No, so I think we were right.
In Congress to pursue such a sweeping piece of federal legislation. Not that I even oppose the legislation, but it would have been expansive. It would have been sweeping. In those cases, you need at least 60 firm yeses in the Senate because of the filibuster. Actually, you only need 51 if you want to get rid of the filibuster. Here it comes. You ready? Rule. So this is just one example.
This guy thinks that we need like 5th grade civics lessons from our YouTuber. That's how
you do. You two do. I guarantee you. I promise you, you do.
Dumb he thinks you are. That's the kind of people who get spoon-fed this liberal shit. It's just people who...
Again, these guys wonder why they can't build a bigger coalition. It's like, yeah, when I'm making a YouTube video, I don't assume everybody is like a political freak. Like if I make a YouTube video about politics, I'm going to phrase it in a way that maybe people who don't pay a lot of attention to politics, that they can understand. Because there's a lot of people out there that have no idea what the filibuster is. They have no idea. There's a lot of people. Like, what percentage of Americans do you think know what the filibuster rule is? I'm going to say maybe 30 to 40%. Maybe. I'm not going to say 5%. That 5%'s a little low. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's much lower than that. Maybe it's like 20%. I don't want to go lower than 20. But yeah, if I make a video like this, I'm gonna cater my language to people that are not like super invested in politics. Maybe they're curious about politics and they don't know what these things are. And these guys are so snobby about it. Like, oh, I need a 5th grade civics course. Like, bro, do you have any idea how much bigger your coalition could be if you maybe dialed it back a little bit? Just a little bit?
Are that yes, they will come down on the right side of history. They're not fascists. They're not Donald Trump lovers, but they still want to just clap like seals. They want to be fed like baby birds talking points that they already agree with, and they want reaffirmation that the Democrats are always right and the Republicans are.
Oh man, there's so much projection going on here. If you dare to question their tactics around force the vote, they try to eviscerate you. This video that I did about Kyle is so tame. This is so tame. This is me at like 5% of my power level. I toned it down so much for this video. It was such a mild critique. I'm not even going ham on Kulinski here. I'm just talking about how I don't think his instincts are good sometimes. Okay, big whoop. Why, like, and this enrages you?
They're always wrong. And we don't live in a world of black and whites like that. Like, yes, the Republicans are almost like 99 times, more than that, 999 times out of 1,000. You might get a Republican that's based on one issue, like ending a war somewhere, and they vote to end like, a sanction on some country or not sell weapons to someone who's doing something problematic. Outside of that, you're basically going to get L's across the board from the Republican Party. But let's not pretend that a solid 30 out of 100 times the Democrats are huffing paint.
I think Kyle Kulinski has very bad political. I don't even know how to unpack that instincts. And I think his take on the endorsement from Cheney is just wrong. The amount of people on the left that were planning on voting for Kamala but are now hesitating because someone like Liz Cheney is on the stump supporting her is minuscule. I don't know if you could find 3 people.
I don't know if you can find 3 people who were swayed because of Liz Cheney. I guarantee you.
I'll bet you could. I'll bet you could. And I'll bet you they're shy. I'll bet you they are shy. I mean, I'll bet you they are the shy, the equivalent of like the shy Trump voter from 2016 to 2020. I promise you can find plenty. Dude, they're in my mentions. I have they're in my Twitch chat. They're in my YouTube comments. I know these people exist. They made their presence known during the primary contest. Exactly. They do exist. The amount of people that were like, oh, I was going to vote for Kamala, but then I saw Liz Cheney stumping for her is 0. Not a single person. Anybody who had that thought was never going to vote for Kamala to begin with, and they were just looking for any reason to withhold their vote.
I could find 3 people that were swayed in the other direction. That also goes against your political instincts, you Californian. You need to touch grass in the flyover state.
People in the entire country. Oh, I was just in Milwaukee. Jesus Christ. That would say, well, I was going to support Kamala, but I don't know. I don't know about seeing her with Liz Cheney on a stage. On the contrary, the amount of Republicans who, I guarantee you I've done way more traveling in this country than these f***os, I swear to God, who are yearning to go back to the party of Reagan, to the party of actual fiscal conservatism. People that are very much turned off by Donald Trump's repeated attempts to undermine our democratic institutions. Those people do not exist in small numbers. That is a not so insignificant chunk of the Republican Party. This is just to remember that we did have a series of, it's 12% of the party. It's 12% of registered Republicans don't like Trump. 12%, man. That is, you know what I see when I see that? I see opportunity, okay? Republican primaries, even though Donald Trump didn't show up to a single debate, and, you know, in fairness, if I was him, I don't know if I would either. But we were seeing states a month, 2 months after Nikki Haley dropped out of the race that were writing in Nikki Haley to the extent of 10, 20, 25%. Again, like a month or 2 after the election.
I think we made this point too earlier, but like if Nikki Haley had endorsed Kamala Harris, I would totally understand touting that endorsement too. I can over
Nikki Haley. How does she have, like, aside from Ukraine, how does Nikki Haley have substantive political differences than from Liz Cheney? They're the same breed of Republican. They're the same breed. Just subscribe. They believe in the same conservative principles, or rather conservative principles.
look the morality of joining forces with a, you know, horrific opponent, someone like Nikki Haley. If there's actually a
Morality, I think it's immoral to, like, if you're on the left, right? Like, I think it's immoral for you to f- around in this election. Why are we around?
electoral case for it. I think there would be, but again, I just don't see that with Liz Cheney, and I don't think Kamala Harris is going about this strategy in a sophisticated way. Like, I feel like Obama, you know, every Democrat has done this, right? You try to appeal to the center, you try to appeal to the right wing. Obama famously, you know, like he told black kids to pull their pants up or something like that, to sort of assuage
Joe Biden.
Pick Joe Biden, exactly. But the difference is, like, Obama was actually promising a genuinely progressive vision. He was actually promising.
Bro, it was a totally different political climate.
Subscribed.
It was a totally different political climate back then. Like, the Democrats had so much momentum because George W. Bush was so unpopular. And by that time, the Iraq War had become a huge liability for the Republican Party. And so we had just like this surging momentum for the Democratic Party because we were pendulum swinging to the left after 8 years of George W. Bush, who was just like this goofy guy. He was easy to make fun of. He said some really dumb things sometimes, and he was responsible for, you know, the worst foreign policy failure since the Vietnam War. And so Democrats were looking at the polls in 2008, and they're like, holy like, we might actually get like a trifecta with a supermajority in the Senate. And so you can run on like way more progressive stuff in that spot. Right now, we're seeing a pendulum swing to the right because of, I'm going to say, inflation, probably mostly because of inflation, and also just because the pendulum swings, and it's a real thing. It's a real phenomenon that occurs. We don't have that kind of momentum. And so for her to instead run on more like pragmatic policies, like, you know, expanding the child tax credit to $5,000 or $6,000, was it? $25,000 for home buyers, and $50,000 for new entrepreneurs. And, you know, the policy that she's running on reflects the electorate that we have right now. There are no indications in the polling whatsoever that we are headed toward a blue wave type situation, the likes of which we saw in 2008. And I just don't think these guys understand that you have to adapt to the times that you live in. Like, if she were to go out there and start running on like Bernie Sanders' 2016 legislative agenda, I promise you she would get mopped. She would be down by like 8 points if she was doing that. That's just a reality.
In a serious, like, new vision for this country that probably did make some moderate voters a little bit uncomfortable, like, oh, this is kind of crazy. So we kind of had to do that a little bit. I feel like what's missing from Kamala's campaign is that she's not really promising that truly bold progressive future, that truly bold vision. She talks about going forward but not backward, but then doesn't really lay out what the forward means, and then just tries to appeal to
I don't know what that means. She has a policy page. She just announced a new set of policies today with like targeted assistance programs for Black communities. This idea that she's not running on policy is silly.
bunch of Republicans, and it's like, okay, now you're just pandering to the right, and we don't get anything. The left, the base, we don't get anything.
Right. And one of the things we definitely highlighted the Nikki Haley thing. Nikki Haley and Liz Cheney.
These guys are not the base of the Democratic Party. Again, they're not. It's like the base is like black voters, black voters in like Georgia, North Carolina, centrist white people like living in the suburbs. The base right now is there is a realignment going on when it comes to education. So like the base in the 21st century is shaping up to be a base of educated voters, people with college educations. That's a big part of the base. It's not like disaffected lefties. Yeah, like people like me represent the base. Yeah, I would say. Well, I mean, I don't know. On policy, I'm probably well to the left of like the median voter. Well to the left. I'm like, in fact, on policy, I'm not sure how much I disagree with these guys. I don't know if they're like full-on communists or like accelerationists, but I fully endorse like government subsidized healthcare. Fully endorse government subsidized public education, college public education. Fully endorsed like 2 years of paid maternity leave and paid sick leave, paid family leave, and fully in line with those policy goals. But I recognize that like the opportunity for that is not right now. It's not. Right now is not the time to like aggressively hammer Medicare for all. We'll just get. That's just the reality, and I accept that reality. That's I think that's the difference between me and these gentlemen. I don't have any illusions about what the median voter thinks about like my preferred policy agenda.
Cheney are not interchangeable. Nikki Haley had a base. It was a small base amongst the Republican Party, but it was that suburban right wing, we won't go back voter. Like, I have bigger fish to fry than abortion. I think we should save women's life, blah, blah, blah. A lot of women that like Nikki Haley love that. I don't want to do abortion as a form of birth control, but if it'll save a woman's life, then I guess it's up to the doctor. Like, that's the kind of woman that Nikki Haley wins over. Liz Cheney has no base. She has no base. And that goes to show that this guy's a real political novice, because he thinks if he knows the name that they have a base somewhere. But there was such a rejection in the Republican Party of that neocon era. That's why Liz Cheney is out with the Democrats.
Bro, you think you're the base of the Democratic Party? Like, how delusional are you? You are not the base of the Democratic Party. You're just not. Maybe one day, and then you can do your victory lap or whatever, but you're not the base right now. You're just not. If you were the base, Bernie Sanders wouldn't have done worse in 2020 than he did in 2016. If you were the base, he would have done better. He might have even secured the nomination. That's not what happened. We moved to the center in 2020.
That's why Dick Cheney is out with the Democrats. That's why George Bush, they've all been rejected and humiliated by the Republican Party. That's why they've been embraced by the Democrats. And to your other point, that they just...
I mean, embraced. We're not out here saying like, look how much we align with Liz Cheney on policy. Like, the extent of her embracing Liz Cheney is like, I'm proud to have her in my tent. She's a principled Republican that puts country over party. She's not over here being like, hey, Liz, let's talk about like, maybe you have good ideas on abortion.
Just don't sink their teeth into one or two popular progressive things. That's what the drum we've been beating all along. You picked Tim Walz. Why not take one of the many progressive accomplishments of the guy, right? This guy Hutch even pointed out, like, he narrow majority in Minnesota, a 1-vote majority. He accomplished so much. So let's talk about how we're gonna, one of Barack Obama's it was a failure, but it sold really well from a marketing perspective. The changing the school lunches, right? The food revolution. Our kids are so obese and
The Michelle
overweight.
Obama.
The Michelle Obama thing. I think you go on giving every kid breakfast and capping grocery inflation and something like that.
I don't know why they don't
bringing
lean
back
into the
child
inflation.
They already did that. In 2023, the Biden-Harris administration expanded access to free school breakfast and lunch for 5 million more students nationwide. They announced another expansion in 2024. Like, they literally are doing these programs. They are pursuing these programs to the extent that they're able to do with executive power.
tax
Thing
credit.
more.
100%.
It seems so obvious to lean into the inflation thing at least, but crickets. It's really wild, guys. I mean, I get the strategy. I think they were talking about it on the Majority Report. They were saying like the pre-convention strategy was to lean into the left. Tim Walz pick, talk about price gouging. Post-convention strategy is to pander to the right. And it's like, I guess, I hope it works out for you guys. I hope it works out for you.
I gotta say, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with their analysis. I don't think it was very good.